a movie.
Ooh, okay. Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we are going to be reviewing the Fantastic Four First Steps. Third and final MCU movie of the year after Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts. I will say, I was a little bit higher on Brave New World than I think a lot of people. I thought that was like fine and like a good time, but although I completely understand why people did not land with that movie. And I thought Thunderbolts was actually a pretty big surprise. If you see my best movies of the year so far, it landed in my top 10, which I'm still surprised about that, if I'm being honest. But now we have Fantastic Four, which is the last really big movie that's gonna set up the next Avengers movie, Doomsday. Because they delayed Doomsday. The next Spider-Man movie is the next MCU movie, and that's not out until, honestly, I think it's this weekend next year. Or at least, at least July of next year. And I think that's going to be interesting just to see how that turns out. But right now we're talking about Fantastic Four. And I'm not going to spoil anything in this review. If you want me to do a spoiler review of this movie, let me know. But I will say that I'm going to allude to some scenes in terms of positive or negatives, but I'm not going to reveal plot details or anything like that. And just to get that out of the way. And I think the big bar here is this the best Fantastic Four movie? Yes. That is not a high bar to clear. Because, I've got nostalgia for the ones from the 2000s with Ian Gruffin and all those guys, but they're not great movies. I'm fully aware of that. And this one is leaps and bounds better than Fantastic. Every 10 years, I guess now, you gotta reboot them. And in a weird twist of fate, this being the fourth Fantastic Four movie, I think they get a lot right here. I think in terms of a lot of the characterizations that they have of the core four, which I'm not gonna lie, they're really the main cast members of this. A lot of the other human characters, I should say, don't get a lot of time to develop, which that mainly goes towards my negative, to more of my negatives, but I'm gonna stick with the positive here first. But I will say, a lot of the casting is actually really solid here. A lot of the ones that I was really hoping would be good, and I think I knew would be good, which are Vanessa Kirby and Ebon Moss-Bachrach as Susan Storm and The Thing, and Ben Grimm. I really enjoyed them. I am a fan casting person, I'm not gonna lie about that, but Vanessa Kirby was my top choice to play her when they announced they were gonna be doing Fantastic Four for the MCU. I'm glad that happened, and it's as good as I would have hoped for. And while I didn't expect Ebon Moss-Bachrach to play The Thing, I think he did a very good job. I will say, in terms of the story, I think he didn't get a lot to do, which kind of sucks, because I did like him whenever he was on screen. But that's more in terms of the story of, Ben's not really in this movie that much, which is kind of sad. But the two question marks that I had were for Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn, and they were playing Reed and Johnny. In terms of Reed, I was as much as I like Pedro Pascal, I like him a lot, I was very skeptical about his casting. I was like, I don't know about that. It's certainly interesting. It does feel like, oh, we're getting the big popular Hollywood actor and we're putting him in a big superhero movie. But he did really land with me. Excuse me. Ooh, he did land with me in a lot of different. He makes certain decisions with his acting that really bring out a cold version of him. Not really cold to the point of, at least in the comics, but he's still a scientist and he's always going through the logical way of doing things. And I really think he made a very stilted performance. He's not really emotive except for one scene that's later in the movie. But I think it was an interesting choice that, again, I think the story could have been better to flesh that out. And in terms of Johnny, I am not really a Joseph Quinn guy. I know, like, the one thing I've seen him in... Well, I've seen him in two things. I've seen him in Gladiator 2. Don't remember really liking him that much in that. And, oh, okay, I should also say, I haven't seen Stranger Things. Like, the season he's in. I haven't seen that. And I thought it was okay in A Quiet Place, the one with Lupita Nyong'o. But those are all very different characters here, and I think this is the most I've liked him in something. I think, again, he really nailed it. And I could say that for most of this cast. I will say, though, my favorite aspects of this movie were all of the cosmic stuff. Especially when, again, this is the point where I'm alluding to plot stuff, where the Fantastic Four are in space, and they meet Galactus for the first time. That whole sequence, the entire time when they're in space, which I saw this in IMAX, is one of the coolest MCU scenes I think we've gotten in a long time. Honestly, it would be worth seeing for that scene alone. I'm gonna be honest here. I really think that is just such an exhilarating scene. And also, I do need to say, my favorite aspect of this movie, honestly by far, might be the Silver Surfer. I would have never expected that, but I know that even the effects look good in this trailer, in the trailers that they showed for this, but even that, I saw a lot of things online of like, oh, the effects aren't that great. Seeing it in the theater, especially the first scene that you're seeing right here, when the Surfer comes down to warn Earth of Galactus, there's a specific shot they do where the first time you see her, and they just hold on that shot for so long, in my mind I was going, these are some of the coolest effects I've ever seen in a Marvel movie. Which is crazy, knowing, like, their reputation right now for CGI. But, to me, at least in terms of Marvel, I think the Silver Surfer is like a Thanos-level CGI character. It's crazy to me that it is. And the same thing goes with Galactus. We don't get a lot of him, but once you see him and you're taking it all in, it is pretty wild to see how much detail is being put in that. And I know a lot of that was practical. It was a very detailed suit to begin with that the actor Ralph Ineson was wearing. And oh my god, he was terrifying, especially on the big IMAX screen. And I didn't mention the actress for Silver Surfer, Julia Garner. I don't know if they're going to do anything with that character again, or at least this iteration again. But just off of the first watch, I think this may be one of my favorite side characters, or maybe a secondary villain, or just a character in general in the MCU. That's crazy to think. And that is mainly thanks to when the writing is not, subpar to me. They're firing on all cylinders with all of the cosmic stuff. It was really bewildering. And for that alone, I think it is worth watching. But now, we're going to get into more of the negative stuff, which, to me, is entirely writing-based. And it's so fascinating to me because you can see, this is not really a writing thing, but you can see that in these trailers, as well as, the runtime of the movie, there was a lot cut from this. And it's very jarring to see, you can see the seams being put together of, oh, they took a little bit of this out, and they took a little bit of this out, and I'm not spoiling. I'm not spoiling, but, yeah, saying what they would have cut out is potentially a spoiler. But they cut out so much to the point where I think there are interesting plot holes here. And now there's such an interesting aspect with this that there's never really explored that I think are interesting. I think the big one that I caught was Johnny really liking space and always wanting to go to space pretty often. And I wanted to see more of that, but there's so much happening, and on top of that, there was so much cut from this, where they have to focus on the threat, and you're always focusing on mainly just the four of them. I mean, obviously it's the Fantastic Four, but there's so much that's focusing on them that the rest of the movie did not have a chance to breathe at all, which, at least compared to the other superhero movie that came out in July, Superman, that movie had enough time as well, and had enough room to breathe where you could focus on these other side characters and flesh out this world to the point where I think the world building in this movie was really off. And that like we know that this is set in another universe, and that you very well can watch this without having any other knowledge of any other MCU movie, even not even the Fantastic Four. But it's so, it was very shocking to me that that this just really did not land for me in terms of a story. I mean, obviously there's so much you can do. There's not only so much you can do with the Fantastic Four. I understand that. But what clicked for me about this was, this feels like a sequel to a movie that came out, like, it completely in its structure, because obviously this is not an origin story. They already have their powers. And funny enough, this is 4 years into them being the Fantastic Four. They're already basically celebrities at this point. And you flash back to when, or at least through, like, they have it in here where they have like the Ted Gilbert show, which is like a little late night show where they have footage of them like putting on their spacesuits and going up. And I think that's a fun decision, but you can see the movie there, and it's really fascinating. It really does feel like you took archive footage from a movie that never got released and made a sequel to that. It's to the point where there are different characters in here where it felt like that they were fan favorites in the non-existent first movie, and they had to bring them back because they liked them so much. The big thing in here is this got revealed. I'm gonna say this. Paul Walter Hauser is playing Mole Man in this, and he's only in a couple scenes in it, but it feels like he was like one of the main villains of the last movie, but got really popular. So they wrote him into this just because he was really popular and people liked him. But we don't have that first movie to go off of. It was very, very weird. And I've never felt that way about an MCU movie before. It was very jarring. But I got used to that. But I will say, and outside of like, story complaints that I really have, there's not really an egregiously bad element here. And I know that's like a big negative, but it's really just like the story's been done before. And I don't know what else to say about that, because it's the Fantastic Four. Again, it feels like you gotta do... There's only so much you can do with this kind of stuff, and that makes me sad because in the comics there's so much you can do with the Fantastic Four. But I feel like you can't really lean into the weirder stuff, which I will say, there's a great tribute to Jack Kirby at the end of this, which I really enjoyed that part. But it's a lot here. But mostly my thoughts are pretty positive on this. I did like this. I liked it, though. I really wanted to love it. And I said in my trailer reactions that there's something about this movie that feels off, and I think after watching the movie I figured it out. There's not that one specific character thing, like a character moment, that really set it over the bar. Sure, I think the space stuff in this movie is all-timer territory for the MCU. You should watch it because of that. And that alone, really. But outside of that, it's just kind of fine. There's nothing here that is excellent outside of the Silver Surfer. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like appointment viewing. It's interesting because I walked out of it, feeling all right. I'm sitting here like, this was a fun movie, but I I didn't have that thing of, oh, that was great, like, you know, Thunderbolts or even Superman, of just like, yeah, that was incredible. Did not feel that with this. I really want to make the joke of like, oh, this is fantastic. But I'd be lying if I said this was fantastic. But I still think this is worth a watch. This is one of the better MCU movies out of, like, you know, the post Endgame stuff. So I am pretty solid with giving the Fantastic Four First Steps a B. I think this is almost like middle of the road stuff, maybe a little bit better than that. But I guess this kind of makes me think I'm a little worried for Doomsday now, because it was in this separate universe, it was in this thing, but now they're gonna bring him on over to, you know, the main MCU timeline somehow, and I don't know. I want to see more of this world, and it feels like this is the only movie we're gonna get in that world. So I'm gonna leave it at that. If you saw Fantastic Four First Steps, what did you think of it? And yeah, I think that's gonna be the end of the video.